Hello, contractors, and welcome to Toolbox for the Trades. I have something very special for you today, this Tuesday, that I hope you're going to enjoy. It is an idea that was pitched to me by former Toolbox guest Tom Howard, who is the VP of Customer Service at ServiceTitan. He listened to a radio show, I'm going to go ahead and say 100 years ago. That was all he's here. He's on mic. He is smiling and shaking his head. But he listened to this advice show called Click and Clack back in the 1800s, and he wanted to replicate that for our incredible Toolbox audience. With him is Eddie McFarlane, who is the CEO of Howler.
President. Yep.
President of
Same
Howler.
thing.
And what we're doing for today's episode is we got a bunch of questions that folks called in and asked, and Tom and Eddie are using their industry expertise, their collective industry expertise, to answer some of these questions. We talked a bit about inventory. We talked a bit about starting your own school. We also talked about, just finding the confidence to grow and to not kill yourself emotionally while you do it.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are going to hear the answers to those questions in just a bit. But I want to let you know that this is a total experimental format that we are playing with, but we had a great time recording it, and I hope you guys will like it. So, Tom, say hi. Say what you're doing. Give me all your titles, please.
Yeah, so hi. I do work at VP of Customer Experience at ServiceTitan.
Jeez, I'm so sorry.
But more
You have so many
importantly, I think,
titles.
is that I've been in the trades for years, and I have several companies that are air conditioning, plumbing, and actually one pest control company. Still have them, still work in the trades, and still, grind it out like everyone else is doing.
Fantastic. And Eddie, tell us about you.
Yeah, so as we mentioned, currently have the privilege of working with the team at Howler Enterprises in Pennsylvania. We do plumbing, heating, electrical, and...
You didn't mention the privilege of working with Tom Howard.
I was getting to that. It's something about saving the best for last.
Okay, I was just making sure.
And I figured you'd bring it up. So
I'm always there for you.
That's good. And so I get to do that. I also have the pleasure of serving on the board of directors for the NATE organization, and of course I'm on the executive board of the Air Conditioning Contractors of America, and I get to work and represent and talk to hundreds, probably like Tom. I think a lot of what we share is really we get to reap the benefit of the hundreds of contractors that we've spoken to over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
You've traveled a lot. I've talked to a lot over the last 4 or 5 years, and a lot of what we share is really the benefit of all those that have been kind enough to share with us, and a few hard lessons I learned on the way.
So what we're going to do for today's show, which still haven't figured out a name, I'm liking Toolbox After Hours now. It was originally Toolbox at night or
Toolbox After
night?
Dark.
Toolbox After Dark. I think it's
doesn't
going to
have
be
to be.
After Hours.
After Hours.
So we're going to...
Toolbox on Call.
Toolbox on Call.
Toolbox After Dark sounds like some kind of weird...
Well, you're the one
Like
talking
Tom-
about Speedos. So
Tom Howard's going to start taking his shirt off.
as long as they're
And-
grapes, I'm in. No, but Toolbox on Call, because it's
Toolbox
typically
on Call,
after
'cause
hours
they
and
call
people are calling
people
in.
are gonna
Yeah,
listen.
I like that. Okay, it might be Toolbox on Call. So this is an experimental format. I hope you guys like it. There's a ton of information. I know because I just listened to Tom and Eddie give their expertise. I'm really excited for y'all to hear it. So I hope you enjoy this special version of Toolbox, and I will give you instructions as to how to leave feedback on it, how to call in with your own questions, and hopefully we'll have more episodes like this for you guys to enjoy. Eddie and Tom, let's get into our questions. Wow, we did it. After 1 year of Tom saying, hey, I really
Yeah.
want to do this question
Now I
and
gotta
answer
make sure
show.
I actually succeed in this.
You're
There's
gonna
like,
do
Tom
great. You're
freaking
gonna do
sucked.
great.
Tom
I was
asked
told
for
there was
this
no
this
right
whole time.
answers.
Yeah.
So
There are no right
There's
answers.
two kinds of answers. There's right answers and then there's his answers. And those are the two options you have.
you know, and they can decide whose is whose.
Okay. All right. Let's go. We're going to do this. So here is
And
our
scene.
and scene. So here is our first ever question on Toolbox After Dark.
Hi, so my question is, how do you train young service technicians? The other question I have is, what does building a training school look like with those young technicians? Thanks so much, and have a great day.
So how do you train young service technicians, and what does building a training school look like with these young techs? Which you guys want to take? Which of you wants to take it first? This very simple question.
Well, I think Eddie can take it first, but I can tell you what it looks like. It looks like the reason I don't have hair is after getting through building a training school, in my first round of training, this is how it ended up. But Eddie, do you have any thought on there?
I had a few punchlines, but I'll keep them to myself. I mean, listen,
Please.
There's a lot of talk about this generation, that generation, whatever. I think the answer to training young technicians is the same as training the other technicians. There should be sort of a $5 word alert. There should be I think it's pedagogy is in children, adagogy is an adult.
Sorry, what? Huh?
Adagogy. It's like someone can leave an angry note at the bottom of the screen if I mispronounce
I
that.
will.
Thank you. You can do it right now if you want. No, it's there's a point and an arc to learning, and you don't start in the middle. You start at the basics, and it's a cumulative. We don't learn things in the abstract. We learn things relative to other things we learn. So there's an old saying that if the student hasn't learned, the teacher hasn't taught, and there's a lot of finger pointing, like, oh, these people can't learn anything. Well, you look in the mirror. Did you have a good structure? Was it clear? Did you have like learning milestones and objectives? And that's not really an age thing. If anything, it should be, since I think that was Ross Albert from Arctic Air, New Jersey. Hey, buddy, good question. I think if anything, that younger generation, they've just come out of school and they have a learning mind. A learning mind is different than a mind that hasn't been learning. The good news about the trade is you sort of learn something every day. But I would say the answer to the first half of the question is just be thoughtful, have a point, recap,
Make it interesting to them.
Yeah, the mind can absorb what the butt can endure. So like you see these people that like pack 20 people in a room for 8 hours and wonder why they didn't learn anything. It's like take a break and mix it up and do hands-on and figure out what's the best method. Is this a PowerPoint lesson? Is this a hands-on lesson? Is this something in the field? Is this something to bring a vendor in?
Well, I heard 2 points on what you're saying there. So one is I heard that basically older ones and younger ones, you got to train them either way. And older ones that have been in the trades for a long time, you shouldn't stop training them, right? So that's one point I'm getting out of there. The second point that I'm getting out of what you said is basically like make it not too boring for them. They're not, especially the younger generation, doesn't want to sit in a room for 8 hours. And quite frankly, if they did, they probably would have gone to a 4-year university for something else.
Bingo.
Ooh,
Like
good
that's
point.
not what they're into.
No.
So the hands-on stuff's always going to be better.
Yep.
I think the big thing that I get out of this is that a lot of people, they're in the industry and they don't have a ton of money. They just got in. They got a couple of techs going. And they're like, gosh, I need to train some more people. And they see, oh, the big shops, they've got a giant school. I have a school now at my shop, but it took me a long time to get there to make it valuable. I think one of the big things we need to remember is don't get too excited on, oh, it has to look super cool like the big shops. I have to spend $500,000.
But I saw it on Instagram.
Yeah, I saw it on Instagram. Look at their nice chairs. Like, and look at that lab they have. I mean, if you don't
have a neon sign, you do not have a training center.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Make sure, number one, you're charging your customers appropriately to be able to afford some training. The training doesn't have to be super high-end. You can have a ride-along program with a checklist. That's what we started with, was a checklist of all the things that person had to cover. Don't just put them in a truck with no outcome.
Oh,
or no
learning by
idea.
osmosis.
Yeah. Okay, great. But if they're riding along, they've got a checklist. Here's the things I need them to cover. And I want that person to ride along with a sign off on those things one at a time. Maybe it'll take you a month. Maybe it'll take you 3 months to get there. But I want you to adequately show that you've covered all those things. That can be your base. Did you have something you were going to say?
Well, I was just going to say, you reminded me of the person that knows the most isn't necessarily the best teacher. When you talk about people, there's people and they may be the best technician. They may be your stopper. They may be your golden goose. But if you put a junior tech or someone that's new to the field, by day 3, they're on Indeed and looking for a new job because this is killing them.
Yeah. And we've all had those.
And so maybe the best person to do the training is the person that you trained last, who's got super great communication, who's excited about the job, who's excited to meet the customer, who follows processes, and that can get the foundation. And then sure, for other technical things, you can do other things.
So I get them in those ride-alongs with someone that can train, and like Eddie said, it's not always your number one technician. In fact, most of the time it's not.
It's not.
That's actually something I've learned from Toolbox for the Trades. Is it's never your number one technician.
No.
He doesn't know why they don't understand this already. He's explained it once.
Like, you should never go to your number one technician basically for anything other than to be your number one technician.
Yeah, exactly. And then that one always wants to be pulled out of the field to be the manager, by the way. And it's like, oh my gosh, worst guy in the world to be the manager.
Yes.
It's like, sorry, compressors don't talk back to you. People do. You're going to have to learn how to take that.
That's right.
I mean, so smaller size, keep it cost effective.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's other things you can do as far as sending them out to third-party trainers
We
and
did that,
things
yep.
like that.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, especially when we were, a smaller company, we did that a lot.
And they're really good.
Yeah.
And that may be the perfect answer. If you're bringing on one tech a year, and that's doubling your business, that may be the perfect answer.
I'd say on those to watch out for is don't send them once and then expect it to be good.
Yep.
Now, and people say, oh, should I send them twice? Maybe. Maybe the answer is, though, is that you go to the training yourself. You know what's in there. You supplement weekly and follow up and make sure that you're having those, weekly meetings reinforcing what they learned for that week at that one training they went to and whatever XYZ state.
And you just bring up an excellent point. I'm fortunate to have a lot of friends that actually, I tell people I'm not qualified, I'm just opinionated, but I do hang out with a lot of qualified people, right? And what they talk
You're
about...
welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Best friends. Just all it took was a 2-hour drive from Fresno to LA.
Time flew by. But what they tell me is repetition is the key, because when we learn things, it goes to one part of our brain, and that's where recalling and then rebuilding on top of those lessons. So repetition and knowing what's being covered. You've probably seen this. I'll bring in a trainer, and the owner or the service manager or whoever doesn't sit in with it, and the training sort of happens for a day or two or whatever, and they come out and there's no real reinforcement. They don't use the same vocabulary. They're not focused on the same thing. And then you're wondering, why didn't that work? That was a crap trainer. And the reality is, reinforcement is key. How are you going to use it in your KPIs, your one-on-ones? And I tell you, the last thing I would say is the training has to have a point. A lot of people say, well, I don't know. I feel like I do it, but I don't really know if you can't measure it, it tells me that you haven't designed it with an outcome. We were talking about Stephen Covey earlier, and you start with the end in mind. Okay, so what are you really trying to impact? What is the point of training, right? Is this because sometimes I'm fortunate to work with people, and they'll be like, hey, we need sales training for our techs, and I'm like, okay, why? And when you ask, that's the symptom. Maybe it's a low average ticker or something, but really if you do the sort of 5 whys, you get to the root cause analysis, and it's really like they need to know 110% about this product in case they get asked a question, because their personal fear is that of being exposed, of not knowing absolutely everything about it. So they just won't bring it up. It's not that they need sales training. It may be a technical training piece. So there you go.
Oh, look at that. That's a good co-host right there.
There you go.
I want to actually ask something, because you said there could be like the language doesn't translate from your vendor to the way you talk about it. So do you recommend that managers kind of like oversee the training, or like how do you prevent that from happening?
Well, I'm curious on Tom's answer. For me, we lead by example. You can't tell people they need to be continuous learners, and you're not. And I sort of, as my kids are a bit older, but the one thing I learned that I took with me in my career is, your kids, they don't really listen to what you say, they watch what you do. And our teams are exactly the same. It doesn't matter how much you pontificate about it or how important you say it is. It's not important enough for you. I mean, some of these trainings are expensive. Not just the wages of the lost revenue. If you're bringing in a trainer, I'd be in the room. Darn right.
Yeah. I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Just go out there, go through the training yourself, learn what they're doing so you can speak intelligently about it, or else you're going to lose all the respect to your people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so as you get bigger, though, so we talked about smaller companies do it cost effective. You get bigger and you want to build a training center. I've seen people go too overboard on these training centers, spend $500,000, $1 million.
Hey, I told you that in confidence.
Yeah, I know. And quite frankly, I mean, the first time
That's
I
why
built
Eddie's doing this
training
podcast. He's in the red.
I'd say if you've got a spot to put it in, it could be in your existing office.
Yep.
You don't have to have a giant lab right away. You could use, old toilets, air conditioning equipment. I've seen people do it with garage doors. Tommy Mello has an amazing training center down in Phoenix that I've seen. You've seen a lot of different training facilities, but they're different. You can spend more money on training centers with the larger volume of people you're putting through. If you've got 2 people to put through a training center, please don't spend $400,000.
Just send the money to us, care of,
Care of Jackie Aubel.
Eddie could use it.
made out to cash. I have a training center to pay for.
Yeah. But as you get into them, look at what you're gonna put out, and then look at how much money you need to put into it. The other thing, I learned a big lesson here.
Mm-hmm.
Be careful on selecting the people you put through the training center, because keep in mind, you're spending. In my case, I was paying for their wages plus their training.
Yep.
I put 40 people through in about 5 months, and we're an air conditioning company. About half of those were plumbers, and about half of those were air conditioning guys. Have the AC guys, as soon as it had 110 degrees outside, they were done. It was like the first week of summer gone.
This
half my
isn't like the
install crews-
classroom.
Yeah, I was like, oh shoot. I mean, we literally had to go to our training center. We installed a furnace. We had to take out the high limit safety switches so that we could get the heat up hot enough to really heat it up in there.
To be a real simulation.
Yeah. Now it's like, if you can make it through training, you can make it in the field. But
we had something where we were really focused on the experience, and what was happening. We were creating such a great experience in that 5-6 week that in our case we do construction as well as commercial and residential, and they got in the. They had this complete sort of cultural disconnect. There was no one yelling at them in the classroom. Like, yeah, to Google some of those words on the job site, it was not okay. And it was almost like it was too unrealistic. And so you make a great point about being selective. And I would say, as counter to this as to many of our characters, where we really want to pay it forward, we really want to advance the trades. You think you're doing that person a favor by keeping them in. I would look, if you're doing this over a multi-week curriculum or whatever, I would look very hard at your cut rate. It should be like the Navy SEALs. There's no point delaying the inevitable. Set the bar, make it realistic, and
give them heat stroke.
And you know what?
First week.
Yes.
It's the compassionate thing to do. You're gonna waste their time. I mean, you're getting 5-6 months. Waste their time. Waste your money.
Yep.
Both of you were frustrated in the end. The longer it goes, might as well. Hey, if you know they're not gonna work out, cut a move on.
And there's a tax that the people in your field have to pay, because they're really the finishing school.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And so
they don't want to put up with that.
Yeah, and it's like, then all of a sudden, they're like, you guys don't have an eye for talent. And it's like, yeah, we do. We're just super, super nice. Well, stop it, because it's not nice to me. And so as the people that we're delivering, quote, quote, a product to, we need to make sure that we're comfortable putting our name on it. They know our systems, our service systems. They know enough technically. We're not making master techs in this time. We call it field ready. But we really need to hold that bar, and you're not doing anybody any favors by being nice to anybody.
You're not doing anyone any favors by being nice.
Clarity is
keeping them
kindness.
around.
Yep.
Clarity is kindness.
Yes, my.
Anything else?
After a 3-hour drive with him, I can assure you he lives by that mantra.
Noted.
Yeah. He made me sit in the back. He's
He's
like, hey, I just need to stop for a minute. Next thing you know, and it's a 15
We're having
seater.
a seat. We have a seat change.
I was like, this is a fun game. When do I get turned? He's like, quiet in the back.
like a limo. He just has like the window that just goes up. One thing I wanted to ask before we move on to the next question is, I hear this a lot and I see it a lot in the Facebook groups, like how to keep young people interested. And the joke is Minecraft, TikToks. But like, seriously, like what are some legitimate ways that you get young guys right out of high school or girls right out of high school who, how do you keep their attention?
So for me, I'm actually...
It's been a long time since I've tried to keep little girls' attention, but
Moving on.
I didn't know that was a question that was coming up in here.
Young women, young female techs.
Yes,
anybody's.
young men
I
and
mean,
young women.
I say this as someone that's, had to learn meditation and Adderall for my ADD. So, like, physician heal thyself, right? I think there's a legitimate thing, and we live in a different age now, and I would encourage everybody, go actually learn something new. If you're seriously considering this, I don't care, get involved and enroll in something, take a class in something. And what you'll learn is that there are all kinds of tools for learning. There's, whether it's quiz tools that make it fun, whether there's Chrome tab extensions that record screens. There's all kinds of tools to make it interactive. There's some great vendors that have, there's VR training, there's online training, there's third-party associations that have material to quantify the learning. And so I would say go and do it, and then make it chunked. And I typically recommend no longer than an hour, and take breaks, and then come back and do a different style of learning. It's been debunked over the years, but a lot of people still put weight in the sort of 3 types of learning. Your was it audio, kinesthetic, and visual, right? You learn by seeing, hearing, and doing. And if you talk to most of the people in the trades, after a half hour of instruction, they're going to be like, yeah, just let me get my hands on it.
Yeah. Give them, to prove it, give them a stack of like instruction manuals and see how many of them will actually read them by the end of the day. It's like, no, that's someone else's opinion about how to do this. Just give me the stinking thing.
That's right. And give me half an hour. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd add to it. I mean, competitions help. I remember learning in school when, we're both from the East Coast. I started in
all 3 of us
boilers.
are from the East Coast.
Hey, yo.
So we have
Get
boilers
bagels
out
next
there.
time.
Yeah. We have boilers out there, and we were, we would, part of our schooling, you had to learn how to thread pipe. Well, we had those large, rigid pipe threaders, and you could stick it in there, and no big deal. But we also, in order to start, we had to learn to thread by hand. And so they made a competition who could thread pipe.
Did you
it was
win?
a 2-inch diameter pipe. I was 100 and probably
He brought the
35
trophy.
pounds in high school. I mean, I could like jump up and down on that lever, and it'd be slowly turning. Anyone who's threaded 2-inch pipe knows. Yeah.
Gosh darn it.
But I mean, we would all get really into it. Even my 130-pound, 29-inch waist out there jumping up and down trying to win this thing. I was probably like number 29 out of 30.
You were at my goal weight when you were doing that competition.
Yeah.
It's good to have goals.
Yeah. So, but I mean, almost everyone I know in the trades is extremely competitive. Putting on that competition in there, it's a ton of fun. We all learned how to thread pipe. I mean, every single one of us knew how to do that by the end of the time. Our teacher he'd have competitions about diagnosing things. We had an oil burner, and you've got these electric eyes on it that verify that you've got flame.
Yep.
So it's a flame sensor, and it's basically sensing to see. For those of you who are not in boilers, they want to make sure that the flame lights, and it's an optical sensor, so it's going to close the switch once that light comes on. So, bottom line is what my teacher did is he took, and this is brilliant of him. Well, he told us, hey, go ahead and diagnose this, and every day we come in, we have a new thing to diagnose, and we see a competition who could diagnose it, and bottom line is that we knew that that the optical sensor wasn't closing, and so it wasn't keeping the system running. And so we went and got a new optical sensor, and we put it in, and still didn't run. And then we got another one and put it in, and still didn't run. And we could not figure out why it wasn't working. You're smiling. Do you know what he had done? Do you have any guesses?
No.
So what he did was he took clear nail polish and put it on the electrodes on the end of the sensor. And so it would stop the connection. He coated them with nail polish.
Oh my goodness.
To clear off. Then he went into every single one of them in the warehouse and slit open the baggie, coated each one with nail polish, and then closed it with glue and left them up there. So even if we got a brand new one, it still wouldn't work. And what he did was he's trying to show that, because this happens in a factory sometimes. Sometimes you get a bad batch.
Oh.
And you need to think through it. Why is it not doing? So why don't I just take my freaking meter and check to see if I've got continuity even when it's pointing at a light first before I stick it in there and just verify this thing works?
Oh, I think you just heard the origins
of Tom.
The villain origin story.
But the bottom line was we got really excited about trying to outsmart the teacher. And he would, and all of a sudden now.
And you're learning.
We're learning.
That's great.
I to this day, I don't trust a part coming out of the box that's for sure good just because it came out of the box.
How lucky are the trades? I think every true craftsman that we all and everyone listening probably knows and hopefully has a few on their team. We all stand on the shoulders of those that went before us, and if you're really lucky, Scott Rule was my teacher, and man, there's a special place for those people that are just really dogmatic about order of operations and process and doing things for a reason. And you still remember this.
This guy, his name is Joe Steinmetz from, Derry, New Hampshire. If he's out there, he was at Pinkerton Academy. Still remember this day. He actually teaches at a community college up there
Yo, Joe.
in New Hampshire to this day. I called him. Yeah, hope he's listening to this.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's the last thing I would say is start
He's
where
that SOB that put all the nail polish on
He's
that.
the SOB that made
Optical
you
stuff, yeah.
who you are today.
I think start where you are. Don't think of it as a crawl, walk, run, fly. Like just even if it's just ripping out one of those technical challenge questions in one of the like Contractor Business magazine or whatever, I think the ACA magazine has, and just pin it on a notice board in your break room. Start there.
Yeah.
Start there. Make it fun, and have a point, and measure. Go for, rinse, lather, repeat.
Love that. All right, let's move on to our next question.
We're short-winded. It's been 20 minutes on that first question.
Hey, Ed and Matt Marsiglio calling. Question is, with the increase in material cost, what is everybody doing to control inventory in and out of their warehouse, and what are the allowable variances based on trade? So, plumbing, HVAC install, HVAC service.
This is actually a super simple one. I'll just put this to bed. We hired a guy called Jimmy No Fingers, and so he stands in front of the warehouse door, and you have to explain it to him. And if he's not buying it, you're not getting it. And we've had no problem with controlling him. No, I'm just kidding. I got nothing. That's a really good question. How often do you get asked about inventory?
Oh gosh. So I think here's the thing. I get asked about inventory all the time. I think Eddie and I come from similar backgrounds of inventory is really a 4-letter word. It's like a necessary evil.
Sure.
And quite frankly, I hope everyone hears this. I don't care how big you are.
Mm-hmm.
Inventory is something that you may have to carry depending on your circumstances, but it is not something to be proud of.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen so many contractors, look at all my inventory. I'm like, oh my gosh, that is cash rotting
Sitting
on a shelf.
Mm-hmm.
That
Preach.
should be in your bank account.
Preach.
That it can get stolen. It can get broken. It can get lost. It
can depreciate.
It can depreciate.
Become obsolete.
Yeah, I was talking to Eddie earlier. We did what's called a lean management training where we brought in a consultant and he was teaching us how to basically control our processes. And we realized we had all this inventory that we just need to get rid of. And we had a rule. Anything with an inch of dust on it or more just needs to go, right?
Sure.
I called up my supplier and told him to send flatbed. We sent 19 pallets of stuff back to the shop. I started calling him and said, hey, can you just run this thing and see when the last time I bought this motor was? He's like, you bought that motor 8 years ago. At least the last one you bought.
I call these, this is, I'm going to date myself, but one time at band camp, right? So what happens is somebody somewhere on call at 2 a.m, and it's always a holiday, runs into a situation, and it's the way our brains are wired. We sort of are, sort of anthropologically, we just remember painful situations way more and way more often because that's what helps keep us alive,
bias.
right?
That helps us evolve.
Right, and so when technicians and owners and all of us, we all have this bias. After that, we swear we will never. You know what? And you know what? While we're at, let's put 2 on our truck.
Yeah, just in case, because this one motor I had
at
once.
one time.
Yeah, I needed it. And a couple things happen there. So basically we get that motor, and it's always 2. We take that one motor off that was the wrong motor that got delivered. We're like, oh, we're going to keep this.
Well,
because we're going to need it someday, and then we'll know it's here. And then you get this stack of motors with random, like I got a,
843 horse RPMs.
Yeah, 843 RPM, 1.278 horsepower.
Right.
With an odd size shaft. I mean, it's just the weirdest thing comes up. But you have one on the shelf.
Just in case.
So what happens is, but I ask people like, okay, let's just say that you ran a call right now. And you needed that exact motor, which, by the way, it's probably never going to happen. But let's just say you did. Let's say you're a technician in the field. What's that technician going to do? Is he going to go, oh, nope. I happen to know we have this in stock at the office?
No, because it's hot dog day at the supply house.
It's Weenie Wednesday. Yes, at the supply house.
Yep.
And so I'm going to go to the supply house. I'm going to pick one up.
I'll stop at the gas station while I'm there.
Because he probably correctly thinks no moron would carry this motor in stock for this long. So then he's going to go buy another one. Guess what? That one's still going to sit on your shelf.
It's, yes.
And even if you're out on a Saturday and exhausted and nothing's open, or a Sunday night, and by the way, if you call the supply house and give them enough money, they will open on a Saturday. Guarantee.
They will.
Sunday, I don't care if it's 2 a.m. Anyway, you're probably still not going to think you have it, and you're going to say, sorry, Mrs. Jones, we're gonna have to get this on Monday. So the reality is that stuff just sits on your shelf. It takes up space. Not only that, you have to get around it to find the things that you actually do need.
Yep.
So now you can't find it as easy. So we sent 19 pallets back. I found 2 variable frequency drives
That's where
in the back. They were. I bought them I looked them up, $5,000 each that we had bought. And we should have returned them. We didn't. We thought, we're definitely going to need these. We're doing a lot of commercial at the time. And by now, they're worth like 10 cents because all the new drives
Best
have come out.
paperweights ever.
I'm like, $5,000. I'm like, what in the world? And by the way, we didn't even know they were there. We had to get all the other garbage off the top of it to find them.
Right. And you didn't count it in inventory because it doesn't have a number. It doesn't
by
have a
the-
parts number.
And what message does this send to your technicians? It sends, it's okay to stack crap up. Then we get ticked at them when their trucks are filled with garbage and junk, and they're like pulling up to the to the warehouse that you have, and they see the piles of junk in your warehouse that
Must
you
be
manage,
okay.
and it must be okay. I mean, this stuff it is poison to a business. I promise you.
Yep.
It depletes your resources of cash, space, mental reserves, and contributes to hair loss. I'll add that one on that one there too.
I think Tom's a little passionate
Oh
about this.
my
What do you
gosh.
think?
So here's the thing. I had the pleasure of actually visiting one of Tom's places this morning, and man has a tight inventory system, great systems. Hopefully we can maybe talk about that in a future podcast. Because here's the thing: the warehouse, the inventory you keep, the part levels you have, they're all a second order consequence of how you do business. So to the extent that you're good at replenishing truck stock, you may not need to keep it in. And so sometimes there's a story about operational efficiency there. But we also need to remember the world's a little different. This is something, so I'll be honest, this is a great question because my inventory's out of control. That's one of the things I was talking to Tom about this morning. And, in a world where we're so busy running our business, taking care of our people, taking care of our customers, inventory just becomes a thing that we have to do business. And unless someone is, actively thinking about it all the time, it can really take on a life of its own. Because it's there. It's always been there.
Well, let's talk about what are the reasons for inventory, and then we'll get to what he's talking about with costs. So a couple of reasons why you might need a lot of inventory. One is if you work for in the middle of Lufkin, Texas.
Sure, yeah.
Mick Williams and Son. I'm calling you guys out right now. Their closest supply house is 2 hours away. Okay.
But have you had their hot dogs? Well worth the drive. Well worth the drive.
I
Come
have
with
a funny
Tex
story
Mex.
about that, where it's every
Oh, boy.
Wednesday our gross margin would tank. This was in Utah. This was down at Western Heat and Air in Orem, Utah. I worked there, and Ryan Snow was trying to figure out why they always had lower gross margin on Wednesdays.
Was
you're
there like
kidding.
a
And we
soda
couldn't
sale?
figure out. And one day, he and I were in the truck, and he pulls up to the supply house. Just happened to pull
It
up
looks
the
like a showroom.
and it was literally called Weenie Wednesday. And our techs are there. One of them had driven 45 minutes. They find a reason to show
Sure,
up because
sure.
it's free hot dogs.
I needed more coil
Right?
cleaner.
I'm like, you just cost the company, I don't know how many dollars, probably hundreds of dollars to drive.
I just
stop
picture
your job,
the
drive
face
over here.
of someone's got half a weenie in their mouth and the door opens and his boss walks in and it's like,
Yeah, and all of a sudden we solved the problem of why is our margins always lower and our sales always lower on Wednesday? Because the supply house had Weenie Wednesday. By the way, I told my supplier, this is in Fresno,
he's not allowed
California.
to do that.
We actually had them remove, and they were really cool about it. They took out all the bar stools out
Yes.
of
Yep.
the supply house.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll do business with you if you remove the bar stools. We don't want them coming in here and sitting on the bar stools and hanging out. We don't want them in it.
Fun fact: that was the week that Tom started his Weenie franchise. So if you, we'll put a link in the bottom.
Link in the
$5,000 gets you in. I don't want to say too much.
So, all right, we got
Inventory.
reasons to have inventory. One, if you're far away from a supply house.
Lufkin, Texas, yes.
Lufkin, Texas. Number two, if you've got supply chain issues, which a lot of people during
Yes.
COVID and the pandemic with all the supply chain problems, there might be certain pieces that you need to track and track the living snot out of it. Number three is if you're in a very specialized field where, let's say that the part has to be delivered from Germany.
Yep.
And you have I don't know, some
You're
type
installing
of
the Teslas of
SLA.
air conditioners, yeah.
Yeah, if you have some special SLA with
Some
a
of those
commercial
commercial-
client or
yep, that's
something,
right, yep.
then you need it. But outside of that, you can get really good just-in-time inventory or some consignment programs where what Eddie was talking about was that we have for our install system, we have bins that our supplier actually fills for us, and it's paid for by the supplier. The supplier does it all, delivers the bin. It has everything we need for an install on it. It's one bin for every install, so it has a 30 amp disconnect and a 60 amp disconnect on it. It's got every type of fuse on it, so whatever the fuse size is for the unit, we just take those fuses out. They replenish what we used. We have both types of thermostats. We have a low-end thermostat, high-end thermostat. Now, this has to be thought through because you have to have a good sales process where you only sell certain things. You and I were talking about that today.
This is what we're talking about. And just to add context, because there's probably people going like, yeah, kits, I get it, I do that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that was a light bulb for me with Tom is we do kits, but because it's, a retrofit and you got to take a bunch of stuff because, once you open the walls, you don't know what you're going to find. It's a lot of vendors want to do returns, and so this is where good vendor relationships and a solid plan of how you're going to handle those returns, because after a while you end up with 3 million sort of PVC, 3/4 elbows, because they don't want to take them back, right?
With slip on one side, threaded on the other, and some
again
sort of hybrid in the middle.
Yes,
yes. You just have to have that one,
just in case.
Yeah, just in case.
Just in case.
In case this happens. Yeah. So. Those get replenished, so I don't have to worry about install inventory that much at all. We do not care. And then for our units and other things there, we have a vendor managed inventory, so we don't pay for that. The vendor has 2 or 3 warehouse people inside my warehouse. They actually lease out a space with a fence around it. It's theirs. On the service side, we thought, wow, we can really get rid of all these extra motors, all this stuff, and get it down to like 2 shelving units.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, you've got 2 shelves of inventory, and it's really, by the way, it's almost all you need. Basically, 1 truck worth of stock.
Mm-hmm.
So that way, if they need something that just has to happen, whatever, one person can manage that very easily. Now, I don't want to pay you're paying your supplier to manage inventory, by the way. Your supplier, that's their core competency.
Mm-hmm.
They handle inventory, they handle pricing, they handle all those fluctuations. Why are they going to order it from the manufacturer, inventory it, track it, stock it, mark it out, then give it to you so you can bring it in?
Because we're really good at that. Yes,
this is our core competency, is tracking
details.
Garbage. Yeah.
Yes.
No, just let them do it.
I think there's 2 things that again, so much of what we battle in our own head and in our business is human nature, right? When I looked at the footprint this morning of your setup, I was struck by how sparse it was. Well, we just talked about how emotional, there's this great book by Daniel Ariely which talks about how human nature is irrational, but it's predictably irrational. And that's the name of the book. And what I think of, vendors aren't going to get emotional. They're going to actually, you've done this before, I'm sure. You've pulled the usage reports and said, see, you don't use this. You haven't used it in 5 years. They're like, yeah, but. They get a case of the yeah buts. That vendor managed inventory, they're going to believe the data, and they're going to stock what they need, and that's it. And then the other thing, and this is something that happens at scale that's really interesting. At some point, the handiest place to find that thing that you need is in your warehouse. But if you're a company of 100 service trucks and they've all got standardized inventory, the nearest thing you're looking for isn't actually in your shop. You probably have 100. If you have a par of 5 on your shelf of the warehouse, and 1 on every truck, you have 104 somewhere else if you're out, and it may be 5 miles down the road.
You got 104 warehouses is what you have on wheels.
That's right, and so that's where in God we trust. All others bring data, and like believe it, and then share the why. I think one of the hardest things because I think everybody intellectually gets what we're talking about. It's doing it to the getting the team's buy-in. So you really, I just spent some time this week talking about the context for things, because even sometimes we think we've explained it, but we need to. So you explain, hey, if I've got $10,000 or $15,000 worth of tools on a truck, and another $10,000 worth of parts that we're taking for a drive, that's money that I can't use for anything else, and I pay for it $8 at a time, when we take that capacitor off. Now that's fine when you have 2 trucks. When you have 100, that $30,000 means I can't invest that in you. And so what I need is you want the latest, greatest tool. So I just said this to my team this week. They're like, we'd like to make ProPress standard, and hard school plumbers are gonna like, that's not real plumbing. I get it. I totally get it. I'm on your side. Take a deep breath. And I'm like, okay, so find me $3,500 on your truck that you're not using, right? Because the other thing that techs know is they're always moving.
And by the way, if you're buying the bigger sets of jaws, it's going to be more than $3.5 grand because they want those too.
I only
just
need
in
small
case they need a
jaws.
3 7/8 diameter pipe with pro press fitting, just in case.
There's so many.
Just in case.
That's twice you mentioned. Never mind. We're moving on. So, like explain it. Like, I don't want you to not have what you need, and I'd rather you have what you do. Like, our job is just to make. We only make money when the people turning a wrench are doing it, and so let's make it as easy as possible for them. But we got to do it with the people and not to them.
Sure.
And sometimes that takes a little bit longer to explain, but that's why processes and changes stick when they understand the context behind those.
You know what the funny thing is I bought a bunch of tools the other day and I brought them home.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife just
Did you take the
listened to me.
Fisher Price label off? Or? Sorry.
No, that's why you're here.
I spent a good amount of money on these. The funny thing is, imagine this, they still look brand new. And anyway, it hasn't been very long, but my wife looks at me. She's like, "When are you ever gonna use it?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just have to have them though. You know."
Yep.
I saw them. She's like, "Isn't this what you complain about your technicians?" I'm like,
It's so true.
you know, I don't want to talk about it. Okay, these are going.
You don't understand me.
These are for my house.
my
These are for my house.
these are for you. I do this for you. No, my wife says that I am white collar, but I identify as blue. So I was
Sure.
I was doing a site visit, and I was with one of our field managers. Hey, Alan. I was with and I had been issued a new hard hat, and he just saw, he's looking above my eye line at my hat, and I'm like, boy, he goes, do you want to drag that around the parking lot a little first, or are you comfortable going in like that? I was like, I've never been called out in my life. I wouldn't mind, but I had an extra large high vis vest because that's what they had. Like, it comes in contractor sizes. It starts at 1X, you know. And I looked like I was wearing my dad's suit to an interview. I was like, this is good. This is good.
I can't tell you how many tools I have in my toolbox at my house that still have the price tags on them, still have everything. I mean, they're still in that plastic clamshell packaging.
Yep.
And it's like, I'm like, well,
you need a tool to open that too.
Yeah.
So it's,
So I have to give the tech some credit there, but the reality is, you know, Eddie's right. We have to make sure that we're actually stocking with what we use. Now, what he got to about pricing and all these price changes, and this is critical because I took a real beating because we didn't raise our prices fast enough.
same.
With
A couple
COVID?
of things we learned, yeah.
Supply
mean,
issues, yep.
Yeah, we had a contract with our vendor managed inventory process, so they couldn't raise our price for a certain time, and then we were like, oh gosh, this
they
is
made
great.
up for
you
it?
know, they made up for it 1 month, and we're
Yep.
like, oh my gosh, and we went like 2 or 3 months before we caught up. Anyway, took a lot of losses because of it. I just want to speak to that. One is if you get your inventory under control and lower, it's going to be much easier to manage.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what you do manage, you should be considering and raising prices as it goes and watching those
Mhm.
closely. One of the things we did is we found, I mean, we had to do like a 20% price increase on our equipment, and it really hurt. And for our salespeople, our close rate did go down for that
Yep.
first month. Now, it's not because the customers wouldn't pay. It's because salespeople, it's all mental, right?
They gulp.
It shouldn't be this expensive. Now they're questioning themselves in the field, and
Sure.
you don't want that to happen. So one of the things we realized was, look, we know price increases are coming.
Yep.
So we just sat down as a group and we said, hey, why don't we just like
Incrementally.
incrementally 2 to 3% just every month?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Which, by the way, that'd be like 35-40% over the next 12 months because you got compounding, right? If you're doing 3% a month, that's 36, but then you're compounding on that. And guess what? Nobody cares.
Right.
No one even feels it because
Nope.
a month goes by, 2%, 3%. Another
makes
month
sense.
goes by, another 2. Yeah.
Butter's going up.
But yeah,
Yep.
gas
Nope.
is high.
Mhm.
I highly recommend this. I'm like,
Yep.
gosh, like how high can this go? Just let it go. Like, why not? Takes the emotion
It's-
out of it.
It's amazing how much correct pricing fixes performance issues. You know, while we're talking about the material price increase for our construction friends, one of the things that we notice is sometimes when you're dealing with GCs or developers or whatever, you know, you're bidding some of this stuff 18 months before, you know, it wraps up or you get to that phase of a project. And so,
I'm getting like PTSD hearing you say the words construction. Eddie does construction. I avoid it.
I
like
got
the
out of
plague,
that a
but go
long
ahead.
time
Yeah.
ago. I don't
I'm
deal in
an
that game
evolved-
anymore.
how dare you? Get out. Good day, sir. No, so one of the things that you know, we've been talking about is making sure our contract language has us protected, or you know, if they want to do a buy down, then paying for storage and things like that. And you can't always get away with it. Sometimes you're sort of stuck with those things. But when you were talking about raising prices, it's funny how a lot of estimators will use, no, don't worry, I just checked today what our labor rate is. It's accurate. But meanwhile, we're going to be paying the guys a year from now. I don't know about your office, if anyone says, you know what, I'm going to I don't want a pricing. Why don't you take some money back, boss? I don't need a raise. We know it's going to come,
ever.
and so it's especially on that construction side when you're forecasting and you're doing look aheads. We tend to do it with commodities, but we forget things like labor and stuff like that because we're trying to win the job with a tight bid, and so but make sure you're protected on that when it comes to material price increases.
No,
What? Oh, go for it.
I'm super surprised if you don't have a credit card that has a 2% cash back, not airline miles, cash.
Uh-oh.
Go out and get one. There's a couple of places I don't want to endorse on here, but like a couple of them. Well, I will. I know.
We'll send them to your blog.
Yeah,
where you get your affiliate link.
Tom's Wednesday Weenies.
Yeah, so I will
musings.
say Capital One has one that's 2% cashback that I use. I know Divvy has worked out agreements on that.
Yep.
There's I don't get any money or any endorsements.
This is
for
just
any
the
of these.
largesse of your heart you're sharing.
Yeah,
this.
I'm telling you, it's a game changer. I mean, all of a sudden, I just went to my controller. I said, just pay with this, and almost all the vendors we fought with them a little bit. We just all just do it. It's 2%. If I spend $1 million in parts in a month, which I have, that's $20,000.
See
It's
how
just free money.
Did you see
And
how
they
quick
pay
he did that math?
check.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why he runs a business and I don't. I just organize
but
podcasts.
It sounds funny because the other thing we were talking about earlier is everyone's looking for the magic bullet, and quite often it's not that one big thing, that next ideation or sort of massive step forward. It's a lot of the little things. It's why you got to show up every day and grind it out. That's what that whole thing is.
Yeah, everyone says, I'm going to go in, I'm going to get at least one gold nugget out of this conference. I'm like, if I can get gold dust, I'm happy.
Because
gold dust makes millions, period.
you know how many people walk away with gold nuggets and do zero with it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's execution.
One thing that I was thinking of when you guys were talking about inventory is the idea of a scarcity mindset, because I think I wonder if contractors who were so hit by COVID and the supply chain issues maybe stockpiling inventory out of fear.
Yeah, a lot of them are. I mean, some of them it's out of fear. Some of it's just because they just know these things. And a lot of the vendors are being honest. Hey,
Some of them
we've
want to
got
hurt
some
their
shortages.
competition. If they have it, the other people don't. And if they've got this,
Yeah.
I know people like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just hoping this goes away pretty soon. In those cases, I have to stock some stuff. You saw some stock that I had just because, in our case, it was ductwork, because ductwork slowed down. Yeah, we did have a couple of tankless water heaters in there for a while on our plumbing side because we had a shortage there.
I would say for us, we're mostly through it, except for electrical panels and switchgear and stuff. But it's funny because I was just talking to, actually it was an industry event I was at last week, and I reminisce about the great toilet paper wars of 2020. Do you remember those?
I had toilet paper shipped to me from New York from my mother because I couldn't find it locally
that
in
famous
Los Angeles.
New York toilet paper.
Yeah, the famous water and toilet paper.
How the other half
I'm
live.
from Fresno. We got all the tortillas you could possibly
That's
imagine. It just solves really well.
how the other half live. Well,
Well, we had to argue about whether it was going to be corn or flour.
I'm out on this. I'm out.
Was it tort?
The reality
I
is,
don't think they have tortillas in Pennsylvania.
you're mispronouncing pretzel. It's
I can only imagine. Now I know why you're so. Now I know
just
it's toilet paper wars.
yes,
instead of
exactly.
Toilet paper battles. If I was using pretzels, I'd be going for wars as well.
I've said too much. The issue is nobody was actually going to the bathroom that much more. It was a scarcity mindset, and I would say contractors definitely fell into that. And this is why cash flow is so important, and inventory management is so important, because when the time comes that you need to execute something that takes cash, you need to have it on hand. And the other part is don't sleep on that. If you did set up, you went from consignment to a purchase agreement or bulk buy, summer's over for most of the country. Take a look in your warehouse. What do you have? What do you need? What's still there? What's still on automatic par levels that you raised because of issues? If you know it's over, does the person issuing your POs at your company know it's over? Does who's watching the ship? And so and did the word go out to all hands that steady as she goes, and we're in calmer waters. Apparently, I've turned into a sailor, so join me on my next podcast, Rough Nights at Sea and Other Shanties.
Fantastic. All right. Well,
It was not fantastic, but thank you.
no, it was fantastic. We've been going. I just want to let you guys know for about 45 minutes. So way to go.
Yeah, let me know when we're going to start recording.
We've got our next and final question, and also want to let you know it's 3:25. Here we go.
35 minutes.
Hey, my name is Aaron Zambrana out of Lincoln, California with A to Z Window Screens, and I've got a question for you. I've often wanted a big business with big growth, massive growth, but it's always been a little daunting because what I have right now is so overwhelming. I can't imagine growing to be something bigger. So I'm really looking for the keys and the clues to help me become bigger and achieve my dreams without killing me emotionally and rub me off to the point where I'm all wore out. So anyways, hope you guys have some good answers for me. I appreciate your help. Bye.
Great
Yeah.
questions. For 5 easy payments of $29.95, send a postcard to Tom's Weenie Shack.
And what was your fake business name? Sea Shanties by McFarlane.
Yeah, it's sort of like one of those CDs of the Month Club.
Oh, sure.
It's a different sea shanty every month.
Now that's what I call
So-
shanties.
Volume 17, Club Hits. Deep
Speaking of
tracks.
Tom's Weenie Shack,
Oh, boy.
the way I met Aaron Zambrana, he's up there in Northern California. It was actually through ServiceTitan. We had we send out surveys that say rate our company on a scale of 1 to 10, and he rated us a 9 out of 10. And then the next question is always, what could we have done to make your score better? And he said, you could send Tom Howard up here in a loincloth with a palm frond in one hand, fanning me, and grapes in the other hand, feeding me.
I thought I was the only one that had that image.
I know. Well, I'm giving it to you all free.
Too late.
free
It's,
of
it's in our
charge.
heads now.
I've got some premium content on this for $9.99 to Tom's Weenie Shack.
Yes.
All right.
yeah.
So, anyway, I told this to Richard Koberger, who makes our videos, and I told him what happened, and he said, "Tom, you know what we got to do." I said, "Absolutely, I know what we got to do." So we actually, I ordered I couldn't use a loincloth because if the wind blows in the wrong direction,
Of course,
we're gonna
yeah.
have a big
Sure,
problem.
that's the reason.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So I put on I got a leopard print Speedo.
You just had one handy.
Yeah.
It wasn't even Tuesday.
I
came
actually
free
had
with
3
the
to
tools
choose
you
from.
bought.
I mean, it just depends on which. Yeah.
That's right.
So and then I got this fake palm frond and some grapes, and he's actually like 20 minutes from my shop in Northern California. So I went up there, surprised him. Well, I told his
Did you have
office staff,
tearaway
they,
pants?
They scheduled it. Oh, I went in there just straight
No,
up.
because that would have
nothing.
messed up with the baby oil, you know?
Sure.
I actually it
Was
was
there
like,
in costume?
it
Ready
was
to
like
go?
100 degrees outside, so the
So you were comfy.
The pavement was extremely hot. So I wore the Speedo and flip flops, and went into his shop. His office manager knew the whole thing, set it all up as if I was going to interview him. Anyway, walked in. It was quite funny. I'm hoping that this video comes out pretty soon because we filmed the whole thing.
Well,
Yeah.
I will 100% link the video to
Well, it'll be
the-
behind a paywall, so get your credit card ready.
$29.99 to Tom's Weenie Shack.
Oh,
Okay,
Lord.
so
Going big, dreaming of being big.
And with
the
with
question.
Aaron, I mean, on a lot of these things, and I hear his question. I hear from a lot of places.
Yeah.
Especially in today's world, it's too easy to see on like social media and everything
Highlight
else. You
reel.
can-
You're looking at other people's highlight reel.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I mean, I get it in a lot of different ways too. It's
Yeah.
like some will say, some like Aaron, he's very open about it. He's like, look, I'm afraid of growing.
Mhm.
Others will say, oh, I don't want to grow. And sometimes it's because they're farther on in their career. Some of them honestly are just afraid and they don't want to admit it.
Mm-hmm.
So it comes in a lot of different directions. And almost every time what I find is, one, they have a lack of understanding of the business and how to get there. Number two, almost every single time they don't have a business plan
Yep.
Mhm.
and they don't have a budget for
Yeah.
that plan.
Yep.
And because the thing is you get terrified. If you don't have a business plan, you don't have a budget,
Mm-hmm.
your budget's going to tell you, look, this is how much revenue I should expect per month. And do it in some kind of spreadsheet. Microsoft
Yep.
Excel, Google Sheets is free. There's no
Yep.
reason to not use it. There's a million tutorials out there. It's pretty easy. This is how much revenue I should expect. This is what my cost of sales should be. This should be my gross profit percentage. And by the way, if you're doing this, do it with your team.
Yep.
Make sure that you're going out there. They all understand what these numbers are, and they're putting in the effort, so they know, and they've got buy-in now. Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, that much revenue.
And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
their number, not yours.
Yeah, it's their number. 55% gross margin, 60% gross margin, 50% gross margin, whatever your gross margin number is, whatever it is, they're like, yeah, that's what I should get. I should be able to do that. And then below that, you got all your fixed costs, your rent and everything else. And then below that, you're showing your profit.
Yep.
And then you start going, wow, yeah, I guess I could hit that number.
Right.
It's very realistic. Now, wait a second. Now, if I have to buy a truck or whatever, and I have to put in the 50, 60 grand plus the $10,000, $20,000 in tools, depending if it's HVAC, plumbing, electrical, garage door, water treatment, whatever. It's all different rates. Anyway, if I got to put in that money, this is the return I can expect to get. Or, by the way, even if I don't do well this year, I could still afford that extra expense.
Yep.
Or what if I have to put in an extra amount of marketing?
Yep.
What could I expect?
To find work for that van.
To find work for that van. Now, I build into the plan, and then I can see worst case scenario, I'm still going to do X% profit. I'm okay. Your stress levels come way down. Then what happens is the next month goes by, and you see, oh, wow, I actually outperformed budget. You start getting confident. And here's the interesting thing, especially in air conditioning, because we're so seasonal. I've seen this a lot in pest control, too. Pest control is very seasonal.
Is it?
You'd be surprised. I bought a pest control company thinking I was getting away from seasonality because it's all contract. Yeah. The bugs come out in the summer. You sell a ton of contract.
Wait a minute.
Yeah. It's less.
I've seen this episode before.
Yeah. So the problem is that, some companies will lose money. Let's say in California, making money in like February when it's 71 degrees outside the whole month in an air conditioning company. I mean, your air conditioner could blow up off your roof and you're like, I'll get around to it in May. Like,
I'm a marketing genius when it's 105 and sticky.
Yeah, I know. Yes. We're all business gurus. We're like, oh yeah, 110 in Fresno, California. I could sell air conditioning. Yeah. Show me. We all feel like idiots when it's 71 degrees outside. We're like, what are we gonna do?
Yep.
This is why plumbers generally have it a little better than HR. They're literally laughing.
They're standing by the warehouse door, like watching us run around and laugh.
Yeah, I know.
Crazy kids.
So, in this case, like, let's say that you build your budget and you realistically, you think, gosh, I'm gonna lose $30,000 in the month of February. But then you only lose 20.
It's a win, baby.
You're a win. You're happy.
Yep.
But if you don't have your budget and you lose 20 grand,
oh my goodness,
you're flipping out.
Sure.
Every month you're flipping out. You don't, and even when you make money, you think you should have made more money.
Yep.
You're just going around. You're sweating. You're freaking out all the time. So you can't to grow. You have to take a little risk. You have to buy certain things. If you don't have a budget, you can't quantify the risk. So you have unlimited risk all the time in your mind.
Yep. So when I hear this, I think of fear, and I love when people are honest. It's like, man, I don't know. It's because I'm this, and I've got all my savings in this, and this is my retirement plan at the moment.
Sure.
And it's realistic to have some sort of.
You'd be crazy not to be scared.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think about the old maps of the world where like there be dragons, or kids that are afraid of things under the bed. Like what we don't know can scare us, and so what Tom's talking about is quantifying the unknowns. Okay, well, let's put it down on paper. And that exercise alone will show you that, yeah, that's right. Because we also tend to overcomplicate it. Because we're looking at we're comparing our beginning to someone else's middle or end of the race, as my buddy Jerry says. And so sitting down and doing the same process you've done before and calculating it and going, okay, so, and then I like to call playing what if. Okay, well, what if I added 2 vans? What would that do to my marketing costs, like to keep them busy? But look what it does to my, okay, well, what if I decided to take less bottom line to spend on marketing and to grow to set me up for next year? Or what if you're just looking at it, it's like, well, where am I going to get money to pay for those vans? So like the whole process you're talking about, it sounds sensible when but it's amazing how we psych ourselves out. But it's very realistic because we're afraid of things that
we don't know.
That's right, and and that's
and we always assume the worst.
Always assume the worst. I think there's back when I was a different person and healthy, young, younger, no, young. I
Let's
used
stick with young. I think we're at that point.
Hold on, the crowd has spoken. I used to do these triathlons, just local ones, nothing crazy.
Nothing crazy, just running, biking, and swimming all on the same
Well,
day.
you
Nothing
know,
crazy.
inside pro tip for those with ADD, it's a great sport because anytime you've been doing anything for like half an hour, it's time to change. It's perfect. But you know, you would go in this. You would train for these. You would go in the pool. You would go. You would do all this thing, and you'd have a training plan put together, and you would towards race time you'd put it all together, and hopefully the weekend before you would actually get to do all of it like it was race day. And there's a funny thing that happens. You know, you either start on the lake shore, the side, or it can be an in-water start. But you're standing there and you all go in together. They blow a whistle and it's timed by your age group, or you know, in my case the special group. And but you all go in together, and what happens is you're
Special one.
It's special.
capital S. You're all heading for the same choke point in the water, and what happens is even though you've trained to run your race, you see everybody else taking off, and the temptation, what happens, especially the first time you do it, first off, you're getting clobbered by, like, there's 80 people swimming in one lane, and I don't know if you know this, but they don't put, you know those, like, black lines at the bottom of pools?
They don't exist in lakes?
They do not put them on there. Don't ask me how I know, but I got very off course one time. But sorry, I like this story. No, the issue is that you're seeing people, even though you're swimming at a pace that you know is good, this is what you've trained for.
Temptation to compete.
You're like, oh my gosh, they're doing so much better than me. I need to kick it up, and so you kick it up a gear. But guess what? That's not the cadence you trained at. So now you're halfway around a lake, and you're like, I'm going to die in front of all these people. Oh, I'm so glad my kids brought a sign, right? Like, and you have to get out of the water, and you're completely gassed, and it's like, oh. But you get psyched out by other people's races, and I think when you run your race, you follow your plan, and if you don't do what you were suggesting, Tom, and putting that plan together, you're gonna run other people's, and that's no bueno, right? Because how do you know what margin they're going at? You go to a conference or you listen to, God forbid, a podcast, and they're like, this is what you should be doing, and they're like, okay, they're not getting that, and so now they're like thinking, I'm doing it wrong.
And you know, most people either listen to a podcast or go to a conference or listen to a webinar. They're looking for a silver bullet. And Eddie and I have always talked about there's no such thing as a silver bullet. And I think what the budget and the plan does is it puts all the things together, all the bullets, so to speak, together that you're going to have to fire to get to where you need to be. When people go to these conferences, typically they find whatever they're looking for. If you're looking for a silver bullet, you'll find something you think is a silver bullet.
And it's amazing because there's a guy there selling a course. No.
Yeah. And it's always like, oh, this one indoor air cleaner, this is going to be the solution to all my problems.
That's it.
Yeah.
And they're going to come home and they're going to put all their effort into it.
They're going to buy a lot of them, put them on the trucks.
Let's say they're going to put a lot on their trucks and they're going to
end up in inventory.
Have a ton of inventory. Or they're gonna do all their tech training, but they're not going to buy enough of them. Or they're going to do that, but they're not going to train their CSRs to prep the customer to get the tech on there to sell them. So all those things have to be built into a business plan and into a model that says this is how we're going to sell them. This is how we're going to stock them. This is how we're going to have them. Or you get everything trained, but then you can't get them enough in stock to sell them.
Yep.
Like, or you didn't build it in your sales process. I mean, there's just so many things to go wrong. So going and building that budget and that plan allows you to take those bullets, organize them, make sure that you can look at the whole thing holistically and say, does this make sense?
Yep.
What you're going to find is almost none of those new products are going to solve all your problems.
And you also tend to avoid distractions like that because you've got a plan.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
And you're not distracted by the bright, new, easy, shiny.
Yeah, and you know, like, hey, by the way, I only lost 20 grand this month. And I was supposed to lose 30. I'm 10 grand ahead of plan for the year.
I'm buying everybody a steak.
Yeah, and I'm going to keep on
Hot
trucking.
dogs for everyone.
Well, it's
we don't even need to subscribe to Weenie Wednesday from
That's
Tom
right.
Howard
Honey,
anymore.
put the weenie. Oh, I don't like the way I said that. Well, we're going for steak is the long one. But
Let's
I think
just switch to steak.
if you don't know where you're going, every road will get you there, right?
Yeah.
And so, and the one thing I do want to stress is even if it's as simple as the process you laid out, which it doesn't have 52 line items, it just has those major, that's still better than nothing.
Yep.
You know? And so start where you are, and but make it your plan and make it one that you're comfortable with the risk because, you know,
But make sure your whole team
Yep.
knows about it.
Yep.
And every month follow up with that consistency.
Even if your whole team just consists of your partner.
Yeah.
Right? Like they deserve to know, and whether you're a one-man master of all, or you're running a multi-state plan.
So it sounds like using the business plan budgeting to look under the bed, so to speak, look at what's scaring you. And then once you get comfortable, get a little bit more confident, I was supposed to lose 30. I only lost 20,000. Now we can start thinking about, okay, what are some things I've heard from podcasts, from webinars? How can I start implementing those and bringing my whole team on board to make them happen?
Use those gurus, those seminars, whatever they are, to supplement your plan.
Yep.
Don't go there with no plan and hear one thing and try to, this is going to save my business. And then it doesn't. And then you get freaked out on the next thing because now you don't trust anything.
Yep.
Yeah.
But run your race, baby.
Yeah.
Run your race, baby. All right. So to close out today's episode, the very first episode of Toolbox After Dark, which
Toolbox After Dark.
Yeah, I really like the name. I think I'm going to keep it, even though it's really Toolbox in the afternoon. But what are you guys learning right now? What's getting you guys excited about the trades, about the industry? Tom, why don't you go first?
Gosh, that was not the question I was expecting.
What was the question you were expecting? I can take it.
You could
what
just
we're
answer
reading
that.
right now
What are
is
you
what I
reading
thought.
right
we
now?
were-
Do what I do when I'm at a conference and people ask me a hard question. That's a really, really good question, but aren't you really asking this? Or before I answer that, let's talk about.
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as like what am I learning in the trades right now?
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing is that I've kind of looked at the pieces that I'm deficient in, and pieces, but mine aren't necessarily trades things specific, but I'm deficient in certain pieces of the business, and so I try to focus on those things. So I actually bought a couple of books on financing, lending, and private equity.
Mm.
I read those. I read. And then right now I'm focusing on, I've got a couple of books I've been reading on marketing.
Oh, nice.
There's one called Story Brand.
Oh, that's a good one.
that's a good one.
Donald Miller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least I think it's Tom. I can't remember that.
Yep. I'm pretty
I'll
sure
take
it
your word for it.
Someone will correct us. It's the internet.
Unmarketing is really cool. I've just finished reading that one as well. And I take those subjects one at a time and try to focus a couple books on there.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. It is by Donald Miller.
Awesome.
You were right, Eddie.
You should see me at pub trivia.
I called it a pub.
Unless it's a music, sports, history, or science. Other than that, I'm no good.
What about you, Eddie? What are you learning about?
Yeah, very, very similar. I'm learning about fundamentals. In many ways, it's an inflection point for me in my incredible circuitous journey in the trades. I'm the luckiest guy in home services.
I'm gonna start learning new vocabulary words after
From
listening
Eddie?
to this guy talk.
I know, right?
Circuitous.
Well, it's a roundabout way of saying. See what I did there, folks?
Yes.
Thanks.
No.
Tip your waitress. So
No, I don't. All right, go ahead.
for me, it's as wide-ranging and as deep as my career has been in different areas. It's amazing how much it comes back to fundamentals and sort of what I call first-order principles, like things that, fads come and go, trends come and go, markets come and go, but there's some things that just never change. And, specifically focus. I'm thinking about, in a world where you've got infinite access to, we just spent an hour talking about different ideas. What should you focus on, and what does focus actually look like, and how do you measure it? And so what is focus versus sort of that, when you're trying to boil the ocean, right? It's too hard and you end up getting nothing done. You don't move the needle.
Got any books, Eddie? Any authors
On
on focus?
Focus
I'm
by
trying to help
Edward
you focus
McFarlane.
on the answer. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, and she was what I'm excited about in the trades, and but I'm learning it. It's all coming back to.
The book's called Focus by Andrew McFarlane.
No, that was.
Oh, okay. Oh,
It was
got
a
it.
joke.
Yeah.
It's funny because we had to explain it. No, no, it's.
It was a joke.
He who
Tom.
laughs last.
I'm really excited about that. That regardless of how much the circumstances change. Now, listen, there's so many external things we can't control, but when it comes back to those that are really successful, they
focus on the things that matter.
yeah, and the things that they can control, and then they execute, they hold team and they hold their team accountable. And so it's about those fundamentals, and focus is a big one for me.
I
If
love
you know
that.
me, that makes a lot of sense.
I love that.
It's making lots of sense.
What books are you reading, Tom?
Oh, I just listed off a couple, but a second ago. But The one that I just finished that isn't necessarily a training book or anything. It's on. It's called Red Notice. It's about a guy who went into Russia after the Soviet Union fell and found all these businesses that are worth almost nothing at the time. No one's paying anything for them, but he realized their earnings are fantastic, and he bought them all for pennies on the dollar. Became the biggest private equity investment banker, biggest investment banker in all of Russia. Ends up getting kicked out and arrested and all this other stuff. But great book. Won't let you know how it ends. But yeah, awesome. And I think, there's a lot of businesses out there that are undervalued in our industry for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Was greatly undervalued. And right now, multiples are going up and up and up. But
Still.
it's because companies finally realized what our industry is worth. And I just think it's really cool.
Yep.
It's a really cool story.
I'm usually reading / listening to a bunch. One that I really enjoyed was Emotional Agility
Ooh.
by Susan David. We all work with people, whether it's customers, team building, and the more you understand people, the better it'll be. And the secret is you're a people too, and the more you understand yourself, it's really good. I just wrapped up.
You looked at Tom right when you said that. The more
Well,
you
listen,
know yourself.
if you're reading that into that, that's on you. And then another good one that I'll throw out there was Bias Interrupted by Joan C. Williams.
Ooh.
It's for the HR is called people team these days. It's for that stuff. But it's really important to understand your own operating system, because that's going to be one of your biggest limiting and gating factors. And so to the extent that you can understand your own operating system and the hacks in it and the blind spots, the higher your performance will be. So
That's fantastic. I love it. Guys, thanks so much for doing the first episode of Toolbox After Hours. Toolbox
Toolbox
at
After
night,
Dark.
Toolbox in the afternoon.
Toolbox in a small room.
I'm excited to do this again.